This podcast is brought to you by Gáis Energy, helping you know your power. For me, knowing your power starts at home, understanding how everything runs, how much energy you're using, and how you can take control of it. Installing solar panels on our own home has been one of the best decisions we've made for managing our electricity usage and costs. Seeing how much electricity is being generated, even on cloudy days, gives you a real sense of empowerment. Gáis Energy is one of Ireland's most trusted names in solar, energising Ireland for 50 years, and with their expert team guiding you from day one, you're not just installing solar panels, you're unlocking a cleaner, smarter way to power your home. Get your free solar estimate online today at boardgoshenergy.ie and use the code HG500 for €500 off your solar install. All right, welcome to the Tools at Hand podcast. My name is Harrison Gardner, and across from me today is Alan Wyley. Alan is the CEO of Energycloud Ireland, a non-for-profit social enterprise that takes the renewable energy Ireland produces but can't use and gives it to the homes that need it most. Last year, Ireland wasted €450 million worth of surplus wind energy, and at the same time, over 550,000 households are in energy poverty. Energycloud installs smart devices on a family's immersion tank, connects it to the national grid system, and when surplus energy is being thrown away, that family might wake up to a free tank of hot water or a warm home or something along those lines. Thanks for being here, Alan.
Great to be here, Harrison. Thanks for having us. And one small correction, actually, the waste levels are even higher than you said. It was about 525 million last year, so it's even worse than you thought. So,
wow, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Alan, I think we have to start. I do want to talk about you and your own journey and how you got to being the CEO of this company, but I think the first thing we need to do is explain what is waste energy? Why is there waste energy? Because I think for most people, that's going to raise a lot of questions right away.
No, for sure. And a lot of people, certainly when we started talking to the politicians in Leinster House, most of them were completely unaware of this issue. So it's not just a general public. You'll find this right across the country. People are unaware of it. In the energy industry, they're aware of it, but outside that, not so much, right? So in simple terms, Energycloud focus on using, as you said, the surplus renewable energy when it's available to try and help people who are in energy poverty.
Yes.
And the reason why there's waste is, it's a good reason, which is that the wind energy is at its strongest in the middle of the night and demand is at its lowest. And EirGrid do a very good job of this because they keep the lights on, as we're seeing here today, is they balance the supply and the demand. So in the middle of the night when there's too much supply and not enough demand, they literally turn off wind farms to keep the grid in balance. And that's the waste that we're talking about. Yeah. So there's a good reason to do that from an EirGrid perspective, but from a country as an Ireland Inc. perspective, it doesn't make any sense because you still have to pay for that wind energy even if you don't use it, okay? So from that perspective, it's available, it's been paid for, but it's not being used. And it's at the same time, like you said, when there's 550,000 homes in energy poverty, you know, I try and avoid emotive words, but it is a scandal. Like, you know, and it is a bit of a moral outrage, if you like, that you have people struggling needlessly while this waste could be used to help them. And the levels of waste are enormous. I mean, you're talking about, you know, if you're 525 million euros in waste last year, that's probably 500 million free tanks of hot water that could have been delivered. So you could give everybody in the country a free tank of hot water repeatedly throughout the year. So it really is a needless waste. And that's why we're lobbying so hard. And that's what we're doing to try and help the people in energy poverty right now.
Yeah. Incredible. It just seems like so much wasted potential. It could just be used. Okay, let's break it down even more, I think, just to really make sure everyone understands how we get the electricity that we use in our house every day.
Sure.
Because I think we've seen the wind farms going up. Everyone has seen the wind farms going up across the country. This is the national move towards renewable energy, which is great. But the way that we get that energy is we literally use it as it's being created, more or less. We don't store that energy. Would that be right?
Yeah, traditionally that's right. But like all these things, it is a bit complex, right? So now EirGrid are putting battery systems around the country to try and store some of this energy, but they're doing it more to help with local grid constraints rather than to deal with the waste, if that makes sense. So, because I'm not from the electricity industry and I'm not a techie, the way I like to describe it is compare the grid to the road system.
Okay.
Because I think most people can understand that, right? And in the road system, you've got motorways, you've got national roads, you've got regional roads, you've got country roads, and you've got boreens, right? Now, unfortunately, a lot of our wind farms are being built well, not unfortunately, but they're being built in rural areas.
Okay.
And the road system, if I can use that analogy again, to get that energy to the urban centres. So let's say you've got a wind farm in Donegal or Northwest Mayo. Even if you store the energy there forever and don't waste it, the road system isn't strong enough or big enough to move that energy ever to Galway, Athlone, Cork, Waterford or Dublin.
Right.
So therefore, storing it is a part of the solution, but it's not the panacea because you still have the problem of building out the grid. Now, of course, the government's announced, I think, 16 billion euros of grid upgrades over the next 5 or 10 years, and that will help. But of course, the demand is going to continue to increase in the meantime. So whether it ever actually catches up, I'm unsure. But right now, so batteries are part of the solution, but also the grid infrastructure is part of the solution as well. And we have some thoughts about how you can use the waste locally. But that is the reason why. So batteries are great. Fantastic idea. Let's have more of them. But it doesn't completely solve the problem. It won't even largely solve the problem, but it will help.
Yes. Okay. So we're generating more energy than we can use, so much so that you have to turn the turbines off. Literally turn them off and stop them spinning.
Correct, yeah. And this is in the middle of the night typically. And so I heard a wonderful expression from one of the head of the Department of Energy, and she was speaking about the democratic legitimacy of this whole green journey. So we obviously support the green journey. I think you do too. And we've all been told, this electrification thing is going to be fantastic and renewable energy, and it'll give us energy security and it'll reduce our bills, right? But it hasn't because, we aren't able to use all the energy we're generating because it's been created at the wrong time. And of course, wind energy by its nature and solar isn't completely predictable. So you always have to have some carbon on the grid for when the wind doesn't blow or the sun doesn't shine, right? So it is complicated. But if you're sitting in Offaly or North Mayo, where I was chatting about earlier, you've had this wind farm put in, and it's not turning because you're looking out your window and you can see it's not on. I mean, that's hugely damaging to the whole green transition project because you're saying, well, why isn't it moving? And now your bill has gone up and there's waste in the system and you're not getting a benefit. So it's kind of a lose-lose for the people living around the wind farms and the country in general. And it is damaging to the whole journey that we're supposed to be going on because I supported the green transition. I kind of assumed my bills would go down. And they haven't. And the reasons, of course, are complex. We've had wars and other things. But the controllables that we can control, so, using the energy that we can produce ourselves, those levers are not being used right now, Harrison. And that's the bit that's so frustrating because if they were, the bills would come down. And maybe not as low as we'd like, but they would definitely come down. So,
and I think even for those of us paying the bills, we would be fine for our bills to stay where they were if we knew that we were supporting someone else who couldn't pay their bills at the same time. And so I think I'd love to hear more about this idea of energy poverty and who qualifies for that and how people try and make sure they can qualify for it and that kind of stuff as well. Because I think that's going to be a very new term for people and a foreign idea to anyone who just pays their bill every month and never thinks about the fact that there's some people who don't heat their house and don't heat their water tank because they can't afford to.
No, it's so true. And if you're fortunate enough not to be in energy poverty, you might be struggling with your bills. Bills have gone up and that's legitimate and that's fair. But it's not the same as being in energy poverty. So ESRI define, Energycloud try not to come up with our own definitions and reinvent the wheel. So ESRI say that you're in energy poverty if you're paying more than 10% of your net income on your energy bills. Okay. And of course, within energy poverty, it's stratified. You know, some people are very badly off and some people are a little badly off. But a lot of the people we're working with, because we've started working largely with social housing tenants. And a lot of those, as you said, they have to choose between heating and eating. So they can't afford to do both. So they turn off their heating, they turn off their hot water, and they use the money to feed themselves, right? An appalling choice in the world today and in Ireland today. We're, I think, too rich a country to have people in our society who have to make those choices. It's really appalling, right? So if you have to make those choices, when Energycloud come along and say, hey, look, we can give you a free tank of hot water and maybe it's 10 or 12 nights a month because it's weather dependent. When there's waste in the system, we'll give you this. That's like a lifesaver. It's a godsend to them because now they can clean their house with hot water. They can wash their dishes. They can wash their kids. They can have a shower, and it's free. And that's really, really important. So, while of course there's
and it's free to everyone. It's not just free for them, but as in it doesn't cost anything for it to be given to them either because we have this surplus energy, right?
Well, yes, but there's a nuance here, which is right now the wind farms are still being turned off. So what we're demonstrating is what's possible to do with the waste. So it's free to the resident because our retailers, they're actually giving us the free electricity to give to the residents right now. Because right now the government, even though it's in the programme for government, have not made a decision to use the waste. And that's what we're trying to highlight all the time, that this is available. We're showing it can be used, but you're not letting the country use the waste. It makes no sense, Harrison, on many levels, right?
What could the possible hesitation be around using this potential energy?
I think like all these things, inertia is a big thing, right? So what happened is the full phrase for this curtailment, and constraint, and the overall umbrella phrase is dispatch down, which I won't go into because your listeners are probably it's all gobbledygook to a lot of people.
Give us the 30-second version of dispatch down.
So dispatch down is effectively when you're turning off the wind farms, right? And then the why is either local curtailment or local constraints. So either you can't use the energy or you can't move the energy in simple terms, right? And somebody in EirGrid will be pulling their hair out listening to my definition, but that's roughly right.
That's right. So that person in EirGrid, come on the podcast and explain it to us better.
And so what happened is, I was at a conference last October, and myself and three other speakers separately all asked the same question. How did we get to the point where 523 million euros of dispatch down in a year has become acceptable, right? And like everything, it didn't happen in one step. So in 2017, when this whole green transition started, it was about 50 million a year. And I suspect what happened is the people in the government, whatever, in the department went, we can live with that. It's worth it for the journey we're on. It's just a rounding error, okay? But then it grows and it grows and it grows and nothing happens. Nobody makes a decision to use it. And now we're 9 years in. And now it's 523 million euros in 2025. It'll be over 600 million euros this year, and it probably more. And so it's crept up on everybody, and everybody's kind of here, and they've got their own priorities, and they're all very busy, and I totally respect that. But nobody is tasked with actually doing anything about it. And so we met the minister recently and his department officials, and I think he's very supportive of this. But he's kind of caught in a bit of a bind because on one hand he wants to do it, but on the other hand he's not sure how to do it. And you get caught in this vicious circle of, well, I can't tell you I'm going to use it until I know how. But if you don't tell people to use it, nobody will ever take any time to work out how to use it.
Yeah.
And that's why we've gone from 50 million to 500 million. So we're really at the point now, I believe, and I don't like to oversimplify, but I think the reality is we're at a point where we need political leadership now, because we've seen what happens with 9 years of no political leadership. The problem goes from 50 million to 523 million. And we're supposed to be in a cost of living crisis. We're supposed to be in an energy crisis. You saw last week with the special measures about Iran. And it was about, the price of hauliers' oil, which is fine for their trucks and all that stuff. That's all good stuff. And a little bit for people in poverty. But nobody mentioned the waste. Nobody. There's no joint up thinking here.
Yeah.
So crisis, new crisis. And everybody runs over here to try and fix the crisis. But this thing is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And people are, and we said this at one of the joint directors committees, people are needlessly suffering with their bills right now. Needlessly. Because we could use this waste to alleviate some of that suffering. But somebody has to take political leadership. It's the Minister of Energy, Darragh O'Brien, in our opinion, if he takes the first step. And it's in the programme for government. That's the ironic thing. So we thought, well, you can get nothing done if it's not in the programme for government, right? But it's in the programme for government. But now a year later, nobody's done anything. So that's the bit that we're banging our heads off that wall repeatedly. But it is just, summary, it's inertia. I think there's good people in the department. I know there's good people in the department. I know Darragh O'Brien's a good guy. I think he wants to do this. But they're incredibly busy. There's lots of other priorities going on, and it's trying to get the bandwidth, the airspace, the airtime with them so that they'll actually do something. And that's kind of where we find ourselves today.
I feel like you're being very generous by saying they're very busy, so it's okay. And it's
no, it's not okay. I didn't say
everyone's busy.
I didn't say it was okay, but I did say that I understand how inertia happens. That was the point I was trying to make. So I think I understand how inertia sets in.
Sure.
And when it's in, it's really hard to break the logjam, right? So we're working really hard to break the logjam, and we're not going to give up doing that. And I think we'll get there. It's just the when is the bit that's hard to predict, right? So.
I really like the way you're using the term inertia when it comes to moving these ideas through and making change happen at a political level. I see that all the time. I feel that a lot. It's an infuriating kind of feeling, and it really does feel like if the people who are responsible for making these political changes and introducing these new ideas had more of a personal stake in it, it would be happening very quickly.
Oh, I think you're so right.
And that's the reality of it. As much as everyone has a different job and everyone is busy and we're all doing these things, when something isn't directly affecting us every day, it's very hard to prioritize it, and it's very hard to empathize with someone who is literally making that decision of, am I feeding my family this week, or are we having hot showers this week? And that's kind of heartbreaking, but it needs to change, and it will. And that's what Energycloud is doing. Anyway, I don't want to be here just talking about problems. I want to talk about the amazing solution that Energycloud is offering.
And I do think your point is really well made there, Harrison, because we've seen and we've called it out repeatedly, and no one has ever contradicted us on this, is that all of the policies around poverty, around energy poverty, around retrofits, upgrades, which you know more about than me probably, all that stuff, it's all middle-class people writing middle-class policies for middle-class people. Because they don't have any experience of poverty and of energy poverty. And so we did a thing with Focus Ireland last year, a great organisation around homelessness, as you know, and but they have what they call lived experience ambassadors to help steer them. So people who were homeless are helping them drive their policy going forward. It's fantastic, right? And I think that's what we're lacking, and that's why the inertia is there. Because if you had 2 or 3 people in the room who had a lived experience of poverty and energy poverty, I think the conversation would be a whole lot different, and the urgency would be a whole lot different as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We need our politicians to take some risks. We want you to take risks, people. We know it. We know it feels safe to play it safe all the time, but it's so important. And the benefit, something like this, that in many ways is so obvious and so clear, but is stuck between these 2 points of chicken and an egg. Which one of these has to come first? How are we going to use it? We've got it to use. How are we going to use it? We just need to go ahead and try something. And let's try something that isn't perfect the first time we do it, and then work on improving that year after year, rather than sitting in indecision until we come up with some perfect plan that inevitably is going to be wrong anyway, even if we think it's perfect. But
it'll never happen. There's a great cliche, perfection is the enemy of progress. And it's so true. And I think as a population and as voters and so on, and social media does not help, because it has caused that paralysis in the government, because they're terrified to do anything, because no matter what they do, they're going to be attacked on social media, right? Whether they go left or right. So sometimes the easiest thing is to hide in your bunker, but that's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, look, they're going to get attacked for that too.
Yeah.
So
we're doing our best.
That's kind of an occupational hazard, isn't it, of being a politician. Let's talk a little bit more about Energycloud, and maybe even your journey. How did you end up being CEO of Energycloud?
Yeah, so I spent most of my career in tech. So small tech companies, startups and turnarounds, raise some money, scale it up, try and sell it. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but that was what I was doing for most of my career. But in parallel, I've forever been volunteering and doing different things. So I would have been on voluntary, the chair of, for example, Bernardo's, the children's charity, chair out in Darndale in the village centre for 10 years. The last 9 years I've been the chair in Southside Partnership. So I've always been in parallel with my day job, working as a voluntary chair in different boards around the place, which I love. And if I'm honest, I probably got more satisfaction out of that work than out of my day job.
Sure.
So along the way, I had a wonderful habit. I'd recommend it to anyone if you can do it, is I used to always take a little career break after every gig. So I'd take a year or two out if I could afford it. And I did that a few times along the way. So my last company I was in was an e-commerce company called Luzerne. And when I exited that, I took a couple of years out, and I was just on LinkedIn one day and I saw an ad for Energycloud CEO. And I have a huge passionate interest around disadvantage, poverty, and so on throughout my life. And I've done a lot of work on that. And it looked like a startup. It was. I was the first employee. We had no money. So I had to come in, get a charitable status, raise some money, and then build out the team. So it was really very much a startup that you want to scale quickly. And I thought if there's anything I can do well, it's getting things to go quickly.
Yeah.
So I said, there's a good fit. And then the vision and the focus around poverty was a really good fit for me as well. So I applied. I was fortunate enough to get it. And here we are. So.
How amazing that you were able to mix your day job and your after hours extracurricular activity into a job that you can do 9 to 5, and now you can do other things after hours.
No, exactly, and I'm still the chair in Southside Partnership, so I'm still doing that as well. But but it is fantastic, and obviously doing something that's there's fancy titles for it, Harrison, like purpose driven and all that kind of stuff. But it's actually great doing something that's making a real difference, because with all due respect to the cool things we did in tech, we weren't really changing the world, right? Even though we could have pretended we were at the time, right? Yeah. It was all about the money, really, is what you're doing. Whereas this is actually, it's all about the people you're trying to help, and it's hugely satisfying from that point of view.
You're really making it sound like the most normal thing in the world to be running a company now that is doing so much good for people. And I maybe want to dig into that a little bit more, because I think there's a lot of people out there who are working in an industry or they have skills that lend them towards a certain industry, and maybe they're working on things that aren't exactly what they're passionate about, or how they want to see the world evolve, or how they want to see the world change. And I think that you were able to see that in yourself and know what kind of work was going to satisfy you. Where did you want to actually use your skills? And in a kind of crude way, it's almost like using these skills, using these powers you had for good instead of evil. Not that all tech companies are evil, or that any of your previous companies are evil, but you know what I mean? In a very binary way, in that you were working in one world, you have this set of skills, and you've now applied it to this other world. And I just wonder what you would say to anyone out there who is in that position, who has this amazing set of skills in this rapidly evolving world, especially when it comes to tech and AI and all of these things as well, and wants to use their skills for good.
Yeah, and I think firstly, I'd encourage them to do it. But I think what helped me is somewhere along the way, and I can't remember the exact genesis of it, but I ended up on a board volunteering to help, an organization out years ago, right? So I was relatively young, relatively inexperienced, but I had some skills that I could bring to bear, and it was voluntary. So I was still working my day job, right? And I remember people at the time going, where do you have the time to do this, right? But it's the most rewarding thing you can do. And you meet different types of people. And that goodness actually helps in your tech job, in my case, or in your day job, because it opens your mind, right? And it also gives you huge satisfaction. So, because I've been doing that for 20, 25 years, then that helped. It made it easier for me to make the jump at the end, the large jump into working full time in it, right? I think it would be trickier to do that if you'd never volunteered in your whole life.
Yes.
So I think the first thing I'd suggest to people is, and somebody asked me this recently, is that it doesn't matter whether you're 25, 30, 35, whatever, whether you're very experienced or just setting out, you have something that you can give back. And I know there's a pal of mine, and he's highly experienced, a tech exec, And he goes down to Simon and he hands out soup every Tuesday, right? And that's what he wants to do. So I took a different route. There's no right answer to it. It's what lights your fire, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's amazing. I couldn't do that, but he does it. He's brilliant, right? And so it doesn't matter what it is, but give something back. And then as you go along, you realize where you find your passions. Whereas if it's all theoretical, it's a much harder transition to make, Harrison, I think,
A quick thank you to Gáis Energy for supporting the podcast. Their Know Your Power platform is all about giving you more confidence and control around your energy usage at home. For me, installing solar panels has delivered exactly that. Lower electricity bills, greater efficiency, and the peace of mind that comes with generating your own power from the sun. If you've been thinking about solar, take the next step in taking control of your energy and visit boardgoshenergy.ie for your free solar estimate. And don't forget to use the code HG500 for €500 off your solar install. Here, let's dive back into Energycloud and I guess energy poverty, because I imagine people are wondering how that works. Now, from what I understand, Energycloud doesn't work directly with consumers. Is that right?
Well, we do insofar as we install the devices and we're turning them on and off, right?
Okay.
So we do from that perspective. But I know what you're asking is. So we're currently a small charity. We're 5 people, right? And we've been fortunate enough to raise money from.
No way, 5 people.
There's only 5 of us, yeah, and there's only one of us last year.
When you applied for this job on LinkedIn as CEO of Energycloud.
Yep.
You were applying for a job and you were the only person working at the company.
Yep, correct.
Who hired you?
The board. There was a board of volunteer directors. So they hired me. No, like I said, this is my risk profile is pretty high, right?
Yeah.
So I was happy to join a company with no money and that had no money and that had no employees. And they had done a pilot. So I knew this thing had potential.
Yeah.
They'd done a pilot with Clúid Housing and there was a couple of hundred houses and Amazon had funded those with a couple of other people. So I knew there was something to it and I met the board. I liked the board and I was their first employee. Yeah. So that's, like my risk profile's fine. I don't have any problem going into things. Well, like I said, it's like a tech startup. You join a tech startup, there's no money, there's no customers. You have to start from pretty much scratch.
I know, but there's usually someone sitting next to you when you join that tech startup. I've just got this vision of you, stepping into an office with one desk in it and one laptop sitting at it, and figuring it out, building this whole company, this whole nonprofit from scratch.
Well, pretty much, and it's actually even worse than that because we don't have an office. So I'm sitting in my office in my house, right? So, but obviously there was a board of directors, there was a vision in place. There was some work had been done, so it wasn't totally from scratch. And I have a very supportive board, so they help and so on. So it's not even when I was on my own, I wasn't totally on my own. But it's that's where some things. And look, I've done tech startups where first thing we did was buy a kettle. I bought the laptop on my own credit cards. That's what you do. So for me, it wasn't an alien world.
Sure.
I know friends of mine who thought I was insane, which is fine. But I just was confident it would work, and it is working. There's lots to do still, but it's working. Yeah.
So we are going to come back to that other question, but can I just ask a bit more about the origins of the idea then? This board of voluntary directors, how did they come about? Who came up with the technology? Who came up with the concept? And is it being used somewhere else in the world? That was a reference point.
I don't think it was when we started. So I think the genesis of the idea probably came or was inspired by Food Cloud, actually, as the name might suggest. So you had food waste over here and hungry people over here.
So we actually
Can we join them together?
We had Iseult Ward, one of the founders of Food Cloud, on the podcast as well.
Brilliant. Okay, they're brilliant, right? Amazing. Iseult and the team are fantastic. So I think that was the genesis of it. So one of the founders, a guy called Derek Roddy, and he owns the company Climote that make those devices, right, originally. And he thought, hey, we could join these two things up. We've got waste and we've got people in energy poverty. Now, Derek's not involved in the Irish charity anymore, but that was where the idea came from. And I think Cathal Lee was one of the co-founders as well. He's still on our board. And so that's where the idea came from. And so I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, like all these things, you make progress. And then, you think, okay, to get to the next level, we got to get an executive team. And then the executive team go, gosh, to get to the next level, we got to raise lots of money. And then we got to get the government to change policy. And, it's like any startup. You never get there. It's never over. You're never finished, but you can keep going further and further and further and growing further and further and further. So like the real objective here, there, Harrison, is for Energycloud not to be here at all. Yep. That's the objective. Yeah. And some people don't believe me when I say that, but it's true, is that if we're successful in 3, 5, 7 years, whatever the time frame is, we'll be gone.
Yeah.
Because the real solution to energy poverty is with the government and policy. Charities like us can help and we can lobby and we can put the spotlight on it and we can have a huge impact helping people along the way, which we are doing. But we're not going to get to 550,000 homes. It's not feasible for us on our own.
Okay.
But with the government, we can.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% understand the idea of making yourself redundant. And to be honest, if you're a social enterprise or a charity and your end goal is not to make yourself redundant, then there's something wrong with the model, because we're here to solve social problems. We're here to solve community problems. Yeah. And if the goal is not to have it solved, then we're our goals aren't ambitious enough. And so I really love that the point, and I really understand it. And that's not a discredit to the social enterprise or the nonprofit in any way, that the point is to make yourself redundant. That's exactly what you should be doing.
100%. I mean, you identify a social problem and you try and solve the social problem. So our vision is to end energy poverty. It's not to improve it. It's not to tweak it. It's to end it. And we're fully aware that we can't do that on our own. But that doesn't change the vision. The vision is to end it. And actually, funnily enough, if you're familiar with NESC, the National Economic Social Council, and that's the government's think tank. So the government, this is now, the government believes this because their think tank believes it, is that they have a paper they did last May, the energy transition, the opportunity to eliminate energy poverty. So they believe that it's possible. We believe it's possible. It is possible. We just got to do it now. And I think, in fact, I think they said in their report, I'm pretty sure, that the government has a moral obligation to end energy poverty with this transition.
Of course they do.
They do. But it's unusual for a government think tank to speak so boldly and brashly and directly to the government about it. And we thought it was fabulous. We obviously support them 100%
Sure,
on this.
sure.
But it was, but isn't that brilliant? That so you've got people within the government infrastructure saying, you have an opportunity to do this and you have a moral obligation to do it. And that's just fantastic. So
because the opportunity is sitting right there.
Right in front of us, yeah.
So when you started, how many little devices were installed on these hot water tanks around the country?
So there was a couple of hundred installed around the country then, and we've grown that obviously since then. But more importantly, the immersion tank thing is fantastic, right? And as I said, you get the ability to give people the chance to use hot water the way most people in Ireland do without thinking, right? Yes. And so it's really impactful. The amount of money they save, Harrison, is relatively small, maybe €15 a month for the hot water tanks, because it's about 10 tanks a month. But like we said, it's not really €15 because they're just not turning on the hot water ever, right? So it's actually free, 10 free tanks of hot water they wouldn't have got.
Exactly.
And that's brilliant. But we're not, it's very important. You were talking about social enterprises without ambition, right? It'd be very easy for us to go, we're doing a great job and tap ourselves on the back. But those people are still in energy poverty. They're still in cold houses. They still don't have hot water the other 20 nights of the month, right? So what we've done, I think, quite well is demonstrated what's possible. And then we said, well, how do we go further? So obviously government policy is key, but with technology, there's other things you can do. So we've just done a recent pilot with Clúid Housing actually in Dublin, where we put in smart storage heaters.
Okay.
And now, so when there's waste in the system, they'll charge up the storage heater, and then that heat will be released over the coming day and days. Now that's game changing because now you've got a warm house and free hot water, free warm house and free hot water. So that's fantastic. Now you have lifted somebody out of energy poverty, right? So we've demonstrated that you can actually get them out of energy poverty, and we're doing something similar with heat pumps, where we're not installing heat pumps, but we're putting in this device that allows us to remotely control it. Very similar concept to the smart immersion controller. Sure. So when there's waste in the system, we turn up the temperature of the air and of the heat and the water in that home, in that heat pump. And similarly to the smart storage heaters, you're now getting people out of energy poverty. So it's really exciting when you start heating the homes as well as the water. And that's where we're trying to get to. Because, of course, everyone's should be entitled to a warm home and hot water when they need it, right? And
especially if the energy is there waiting to be used. If the infrastructure is in place, the lines are in place, the wind turbines are there.
Yep.
Let's use them.
Well, you won't get any argument from me on that one, right? But that's no, absolutely. I mean, that's what this
podcast is all just about confirmation bias, as often as possible.
As often as possible. But it is, and if it makes you feel any better with your confirmation bias, we've been into the department. I've met personally 50 TDs and senators in Leinster House in the last 6 or 8 months. We've presented to 3 joint Oireachtas committees. We've met the minister. We've met everybody. Not one person has said to us, "Oh, this is a bad idea, we shouldn't do it." Or not one person has said to us, "Oh, you can't do that." Not one. And now they've said, "Oh, well, it'd be difficult to start it. Oh, gosh, there's hesitancy." Yes. But has anyone said, "No, it's a terrible idea," or you're missing something? Because, sometimes it's complex.
Sure.
And we don't claim to have all the answers. And the other thing which we always stress, Harrison, is it's not about Energycloud. It's about energy poverty.
Of course.
So if we disappear in the morning, we'd be delighted to go if energy poverty is solved. And we're not, we didn't ask the government for any money. We're not taking any money. We don't take any money from the government because we want to be independent so we can call out the lack of action. Because if we took a few quid for a pilot, then the government would say, "Oh, we're working with Energycloud," and we'd have to go, "Yeah, they kind of are," but we wouldn't be helping energy poverty that much.
Okay.
So we're really strong on that we want to actually make sure that whatever we do is about ending energy poverty, and that we don't allow anybody to sideline us along the way. So,
all right. Let's go back to that question that I interrupted you on. How does it work? How does someone who's experiencing energy poverty get into this system? Yeah,
okay. So before I shocked you with the 5 people thing. So we've, because we're a 5-person charity, we're conscious of our own bandwidth and our own capabilities and our own infrastructure, right? So what we've been working with, and it's working really well, is we're working with social housing tenants. So people who are either in local authority homes, so the county councils, or approved housing body homes like Clúid, Cooperative, TUA, and so on, right? So that's who we work with. And we do it that way for a couple of reasons. One is because we're fairly confident that those people are in energy poverty, because Energycloud are not going to say, "Harrison, before I sign you up, can you please show me your proof of income and da-da-da." We're not getting into that at all. We don't want to stigmatize people, but we also just don't think it's necessary at this point. So we are working with those, and that's working really well. So we'll go to, if I take South Dublin County Council as an example, they have a list of about 600 houses that have hot water tanks and so on. They have much more than this, but the initial list is about 600, and we're hoping to get about 300 or 400 of those up and running. So they'll select the houses. They'll select the estates. They'll then, with us, reach out to the estates, to the residents in the estates and say, "Look, we're running this pilot with Energycloud. Would you like to do this? If so, please sign up." It's opt-in, and you can opt out anytime you want. There's no cost to the resident at all. And that's how we've been going so far. And it's great. But the reality is, of course, there's 550,000 homes in energy poverty. And about 180,000 of those are social housing. So we're starting with, if you like, a third of the problem, and we're trying to get to them. And of course, the heat pumps help us get to more, and the smart storage heaters as well. But there's a much broader issue, which is if you're privately rented or privately owned, you could still be in energy poverty. And today we can't deal directly with individuals only because we don't have the bandwidth. So we'd like to next year or the year after when we get a bit bigger. But right now we're doing it through our partners, because that way they can manage the identification and the filtration of the people that we actually can work with, right? So is that perfect? Absolutely not. Would we like to do more? Of course. But you can only do what you can do, right? So that's where we're starting. So it's not that we're not interested in privately owned or rented, but we understand there's different challenges. So we have done a little bit of privately owned. We did that with Age Friendly Ireland last year in Cork City Council. Siobhan McCarthy is the coordinator down there, an amazing person. And that's, small enough pilot, 20, 30, 40 homes, that kind of stuff. And we'll do something similar in Donegal. But again, Age Friendly are helping us identify the people.
Of course.
And the big issue in energy poverty, which we haven't got to yet, is privately rented. And that's why the government policy is so important, because we have lots of ideas. Maybe you don't want me to go there yet, but around targeted credits for people in energy poverty.
I think that's where we should go, because I think you are you're running a pilot program, and you shouldn't be apologetic about it
Yeah.
being a pilot program. That's the point. You're trying to create a model and prove
Yeah.
a model that works, that can be scaled up. And Energycloud might not be the organization that scales it all the way up.
Sure.
That it needs to happen on a different scale. So that's perfectly fine. But yeah, let's hear what the scaled up version looks like. Because who's the person that's listening to this that might have that solution or that next step
Sure.
aside from a politician, but who might have that next
Yeah,
input?
but I think and not to always bring it back to the politicians, but the politicians are critical because the policy is so vital to making this, to solving this, Harrison. That's really critical. And the reason it's critical is because politicians are the only ones who can do things within the energy system, like targeted energy credits for people, right?
Yes.
So that is that could be an enormously impactful thing to do. Regardless of whether you're social housing, privately owned or privately rented. Because if you have a targeted credit based on your circumstances, that would work, right? Now, we know, and we didn't approve of the universal energy credits. You know, we all got $250 a year in the budget 2 years ago and 3 years ago to help with the cost of living, right? The principle of that is fine, but the lack of targeting was not. But what it did demonstrate, which is beautiful, and it's a precedent, and we like precedents, is that the government can transfer money from the exchequer through the energy retailers to the energy consumers, right? So they did that. They did that 2 years in a row. And if you'd asked them 3 years previously, I know what they would have said. They said, oh, that's impossible. That would be meddling with the market, or we'd be in trouble with the EU. But they did it because there was a crisis, right? So we know they can do it. So we just think that that's something that targeted energy credits are so important, right?
And all it would take is another social enterprise to start up whose job is to, like these other organizations you work with who target specific demographics or specific groups in need, to help create this database of everyone's individual circumstances, whether they need it or not.
Of course, and look, you could create another social enterprise to do that, but you don't really need one. Because there is a list of the 300,000 people in arrears. We have that list. There's a list of the 450,000 people on the fuel energy allowance. We have that list. There's a list of everybody on social welfare. We have that list. So the lists are there. So there really is no excuse other than, because I'm not naive, is that when you make a list of who's getting something, there's another list of who's not. Yes. And you touched on this earlier about the people being terrified of making a decision. That politically is always one where there's a bun fight. Well, you can't do this because we're excluding those people and we forgot about those people. And what about these? Oh, let's do nothing. So that's the bit that we have to break down. But the targeted energy credits is an obvious way to use the waste. And you don't need Energycloud or anybody else involved in that. You can just do that, right? So that's the first thing. And the other thing that when you look at different options is there's a big push in the energy market to getting people to use more, increase the demand during the evenings, right? So, they're going to have dynamic tariffs are coming soon. You've got nighttime tariffs. Well, why don't we have a social tariff? When you say this in certain quarters, it causes them to break out in a rash, right? So maybe let's not call it a social tariff. Let's call it a waste tariff or something, right? So that it doesn't have any bad connotations, right?
Sure.
But basically it's a rate on your bill, which is zero or close to zero. And when there's waste in the system, why don't you make that available? Now, Energycloud would have like that to be available for people in energy poverty. But you know what? If you gave it to everyone else in the community, that's okay too. We don't mind. So a simple example, you've got waste in Mayo, and I'm not picking on Mayo here, but just as, there's a big wind farm there and they have difficulty using all the power. And if there's going to be waste tonight, don't dump it. Leave the turbine on and tell everyone in Mayo you can have free energy tonight. Why not? It's wasted anyway, right? So, and you can't use it and you can't store it long enough to use it somewhere else. So there are things you can do at a governmental level.
People in Mayo are going to be up in arms. They're going to hear this.
They should go straight to Dara Cleary and ask him why isn't he doing this already, right? And absolutely, it would be, but it could apply to every county in the country because there's waste in every county in the country, and not always at the same time or at the same levels. But again, I'm not trying to be simplistic, Harrison. But my point is there are things you can do, and you don't need another social enterprise to do them.
No, fair enough. But I think you're being the opposite of simplistic. I think what you're saying is that the one-size-fits-all solution doesn't work. People are in different circumstances, and giving everyone the same benefits or the same rates is not a solution. It's not helping people out of energy poverty. It's not helping people who have less opportunity, who've had less privilege or less chances to to be in a situation where they're not in energy poverty. And we know these one-size-fits-all solutions don't work. They don't work for housing. They don't work for farming. They don't work for anything in the life. We need diversity. We need to do things on a smaller scale. We need to do things at a community level. Yeah. And it could be something that is that goes from a national scale down to a county by county via the county council. Yeah. You know, we've got the systems and the infrastructure in place to help people more specifically and more directly to the needs that their community is facing. And I think what you're describing is anything but simplistic. It's saying, let's be more targeted. Let's give people what they actually need, rather than creating a blanket idea that feels good for everyone. Because the reality is, you're never going to make everyone happy with any decision you make, even if you stay safe. So why not make a decision that really benefits people? And you're going to get some flack for it, but that's okay.
No, I think you're right. And there was a lot of studies around these universal credits, not just in Ireland, but also like around the world. And what they discovered is that while you think that's a safety blanket and you're not going to get any flack for it, when you give a millionaire 250 quid that they don't need for their energy bills, it actually annoys them, because they're then going, I don't need this. Why didn't you give it to somebody who needs it?
Exactly.
And of course, there are selfish millionaires who go, great, I'll take it. But most people who don't need something and they're given it when they know other people need it more, it actually annoys them. Yeah. And there's a lot of studies around that. And so anybody in the government who thinks it's a good idea is wrong about that, because it doesn't get you out of jail at all.
No.
And also, it just puts dependencies back in the system, right? Because now you're saying, okay, am I going to get that every year even though I don't need it? Oh, you're taking it off me next year. And so by giving it to somebody who doesn't need it, it's a bad idea, because when you take it back, you get hit twice, right? So I agree with you completely. And like all these things, you can get stuck, like we mentioned inertia earlier, you can get stuck with inertia and never do anything. But why not start? And somebody, not me, so I won't take credit, I was at this thing and they were making the point of the incredible response by the government during the COVID epidemic, right? Or pandemic. And they... Of course, did we get everything right? No. But did the government move quickly? Yes, they did. So they gave money to keep businesses open, et cetera, et cetera. People who were put out of work, they got compensation just to keep the country on its legs and on the wheels for a little while. And then they tweaked it when they figured out, we gave too much here and not enough there, right? But it's a great example of actually action. So if you start... And that's the thing. So if we start, and whether it's at national level with the targeted credit or whether it's at community level, like you said, you could do it either way. You could do it both ways, but start. And that's the thing.
Yeah, let's start. And it'll be a little bit wrong, and we'll correct it.
Definitely.
And we'll course correct and we'll fix it, and it'll get better and better. But it won't go anywhere if we don't start.
If we don't start. And we've said many times, we don't know all the answers. We don't think we do. We're not claiming to. But we do. We have identified a problem and we have identified a potential solution or part solution to it. And why don't we start?
Yeah, 100%. Alan, for anyone who's listening who wants to support this somehow right now, what's the action for them to take, whether they're working in the industry or not?
Yeah, so I think the great, and thank you for having us on today, but I mean, the amazing thing about any platform like this is it builds awareness, right? So now if you're aware of a problem that you weren't aware of, and like we were on RTE recently, and the first thing they asked, I mean, you're claiming that there's all this waste in the system, right? Because people aren't aware of it. So being aware is really important, right? Yeah. So thank you for that. And now that you're aware, well, why don't you reach out to your politician and ask them, why aren't we using this waste, right? Why don't you ring, I always call it Joe Duffy still, but it's Kieran Cuddy now. But why don't you get onto the radio stations, whatever platforms you're on, social media, your local councillors. Why don't you go to these people and ask, why aren't we doing this? Because I think any pressure that we can build in the system is going to be positive. And like I said, we've spent a lot of time in Leinster House and we're working really hard in there. And we get universal support, but so far, no action. So now I think we're really at the point of political leadership and action. And that's what we're looking for next. So I won't use the word simplistic again, but that's the point we're at. Because if the government announce we're now going to start using the waste as per the programme for government, now everybody's got to come on board. So, EirGrid, the department, are now going to be instructed by the minister, will you figure out how to use this, right? So anybody who works in EirGrid, works in the department, works in the government infrastructure, has access to their councillors or TDs, anybody who can help push this along. And like you said, Harrison, you're right. It doesn't have to start on a global, try and fix it all in one step, but we do need to start.
Yeah, 100%. I imagine if this is the ask, I imagine there's a lot of people out there who feel intimidated to talk about something that they don't fully know.
Yeah.
I wonder, does Energycloud have a letter or something on your website or something that could be a useful tool for people to be able to talk to their politicians? It's almost like a draft letter that they can work around to send to.
No, it's a great idea. Actually, we
channels.
don't have that on our website, but I'll fix that.
Fix that, because I think
but we do have like sort of frequently asked questions about how it works. But we also would have had, and we've published this. It's on our website. The monthly waste report, which is explaining what's actually happening, and people can access that. And I think that's pretty simple. If they look at that, and all of the politicians have been sent that. So it's not like you'll be knocking on a door and the politician will look at you like you've got two heads.
Yeah. But I think it's more to empower people with the information so they feel like they can go and have the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think if you're up for it, then we can direct people to the website.
Yeah.
And there's a resource there for them to read it, to really understand it, to take it, make it your own a little bit, talk about your own situation, talk about your community, and then send that to your representative,
No, be delighted. We'll fix that. I don't have that today, Harrison, but
that's all right. You will by the time this comes out.
And thank you for the free consultancy. Yeah. No, absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
The consultancy on community mobilization.
Yeah, no better man.
Look, Alan, thanks so much for coming in. It's so interesting. Thank you for the work.
Well, thank you for having us on. It's brilliant. So I appreciate it.
All right. This has been the Tools at Hand podcast. My name is Harrison Gardner. If there's someone else that you would like to hear on this show, actually, Alan, that's what I wanted to ask you. I always ask everyone who else should come on the show, because you're in this industry, you're doing this work in the social enterprise sphere. You must know people who are doing really interesting work as well.
Sure. No, there's loads. I mean, when I thought you might ask me this, and I was thinking, okay, on one hand, if I suggest somebody, they'll never forgive me. And then if I forget to suggest somebody, they'll never forgive me either. Right?
Throw them under the bus.
Throw them under the
Go
bus.
on.
So there's a couple of people. I think Tom Popple, who runs the Climate Carnival, really interesting guy, brilliant guy on this journey of sustainability, and a very creative guy. So I think he'd be brilliant.
I've heard of Tom. I've never met him.
Yeah,
I've heard of Tom.
And obviously easy for you to connect to him, but I can help you if you want. I think Pauline O'Reilly in the Irish District Energy Associations, that's district heating and stuff. She was a former senator with the Green Party. She's brilliant, so she might be interesting to talk to. And then if I can throw one more in the mix, there's Andrew Sheehan in sustainabilityexamples.com. Smaller company, really interesting guy. His journey is interesting as well, how he ended up doing this. So, but yeah, there's a couple. And
brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, if you can put me in touch, I'll do my best.
Delighted
Try and twist their arm. All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Tools at Hand. If there's someone you would like to hear on the podcast, please get in touch, reach out through one of the many channels. I would really appreciate if you could like and subscribe and review this podcast, because that's what's going to make it possible for me to keep making it. Our producer is Aidan Power. Our engineer is Tom McAuliffe. The theme music is by Evelyn Francis. My name is Harrison Gardner, and this is the Tools at Hand podcast. Until next time, and be kind to each other.